West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Special counsel Jack Smith is making Donald Trump pay for a filing Trump made in the Mar-a-Lago criminal document case a few weeks back, where I described what Donald Trump was doing as a massive overreach. And I said back then that special counsel Jack Smith would make Donald Trump pay and make Judge Eileen Cannon pay, and Jack Smith is doing that right now in what Jack Smith filed. So Donald Trump was requesting that his lawyers and Donald Trump's co-defendants in the criminal case in the Southern District of Florida regarding the willful retention of national defense information, that their lawyers participate in SEPA Section 4 ex parte in-camera hearings where criminal defense lawyers are not allowed to be present in. But because you got Judge Eileen Cannon, Donald Trump, and Trump's co-defendants, Walt T. Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira, were like, heck, whatever, we want to be a part of it, so let's have our lawyers be present. That's not a normal thing. That does not happen, and there's serious 11th Circuit precedent and serious precedent across the country that says that is just not what happens when it comes to the Classified Information Procedure Act. But Trump asked for it, and Judge Eileen Cannon's the type of judge who ignores the law and would help him. And that's why I said this was an overreach, because Judge Eileen Cannon has been purposefully making paperless orders, not substantive orders that can actually be appealed. She's been delaying and obstructing things by not reaching decisions. The lesson Judge Eileen Cannon learned when she was previously overturned twice in the case involving the search warrant and executed on Mar-a-Lago, where she asserted equitable jurisdiction where she should not have asserted that jurisdiction. She learned the wrong lesson, where she said, maybe I shouldn't be ruling so quickly so I don't get overturned so quickly. So now in the Mar-a-Lago document case that she's been unfortunately randomly assigned to, she's now making these rulings that are scheduling in nature that really can't be appealed. But when Donald Trump asked her, hey, Judge Eileen Cannon, we want to participate in SEPA Section 4, I said, that's an overreach. And special counsel Jack Smith's going to swoop in and he's going to say, that's not appropriate. And if you do, I'm going to go to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeal. That's basically what Jack Smith has just done right here. Here it is, the government's consolidated opposition to Trump's motion for access to SEPA Section 4 filings, and Nauta and de Oliveira's motion related to the ex parte nature of SEPA Section 4. And so basically just what that title means is Jack Smith saying Trump's lawyers, Walt T. Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira, Trump's co-defendants' lawyers, are not entitled to be at SEPA Section 4 ex parte in-camera hearings. The law is crystal clear. And special counsel Jack Smith says, look at the plain text of SEPA Section 4 about ex parte in-camera hearings, but also take a look at a 2008 11th Circuit Court of Appeals case, Judge Eileen Cannon, your bosses in the 11th Circuit, in a case called United States v. Campa, recognize that these hearings take place ex parte in camera, meaning without the criminal defendant or the criminal defendant's lawyer present. Why? Because we're dealing with such highly sensitive national security documents that in a SEPA Section 4 hearing, the prosecutors are asking the judge to withhold certain documents and then later to substitute in place of the documents, for example, to substitute in the place of nuclear codes or war plans or things that could really damage the national security of our country, some sort of summary or other description so that the document could go before a jury at the trial, so a criminal defendant's Sixth Amendment rights can be preserved while balancing the serious national security implications as well, since we don't want criminal defendants to engage in a form of blackmail called gray mail, where they go, we need these documents before a public jury, and we will threaten the national security, or you can dismiss these charges against us. We want to prevent that sort of blackmailing the prosecution to dismiss cases where things are highly sensitive and a criminal defendant saying these documents need to be public. We have a right to a public jury. So that's why Congress enacted this statute. And here Jack Smith is saying, look, on December 6th, Donald Trump filed this motion seeking his attorney's eyes-only access to the government's filings pursuant to Section 4 of SEPA. He also seeks to compel the government to publicly file redacted versions of its SEPA Section 4 motions, but neither the statute, SEPA, the Classified Information Procedures Act, nor the cases interpreting it, nor the off-point cases Trump cites justify the relief he seeks. Section 4 of SEPA, Judge Cannon, plainly contemplates and authorizes proceeding ex parte, and appellate courts have held uniformly in the face of defense challenges that its text and underlying rationale justify proceeding ex parte, whereas here, defense access would defeat the motion's purpose. The 11th Circuit did so in the case United States v. Campa, 2008. Trump fails to distinguish the Campa case and the cases from the other circuits with similar holdings. Trump struggles to find a single case to support his motion. Even the three courts that Donald Trump cites to claim that there is some other way of handling SEPA Section 4, Special Counsel Jack Smith say they did not do what Donald Trump claims they did. He's just lying to you, Judge Cannon. And then there was this great part as well in this motion that was filed by Jack Smith where he talks about how sensitive these documents are. Jack Smith goes, here's on page 9 and 10, he goes, the information at issue goes well beyond what even someone with a top secret SCI security clearance can lawfully access. Many of the documents require additional read-ins. There is no reason why Donald Trump's valet, Waltine Nauta, or any valet would have received such read-ins. Referring to Nauta as one of Donald Trump's closest advisors is a misnomer. Nauta has described his role as a personal aide to Trump, as taking care of items like Trump's wardrobe, food, schedule updates, itinerary, and appointments. That defendants are not accused terrorists again misses the point in determining whether the defense should be allowed access to the government's SEPA Section 4 disclosure hearing with the federal judge. Now, here's where Donald Trump overreached. Here's where Special Counsel Jack Smith is going to make Donald Trump pay. We all think that Judge Eileen Cannon is probably going to make the wrong ruling here. One of the things that Donald Trump is asking that Cannon do kind of just rubbing his finger in special counsel Jack Smith's face and trying to gloat that he's got this corrupt judge who's willing to do whatever he wants this judge to do, is he's even saying that there should be unredacted portions of the SEPA Section 4 filings that should be made public on the public ECF docket. What Donald Trump's doing, and he knows he's doing it, is quintessential blackmail, is quintessential gray mail. You could dismiss these charges, or I'm going to make Judge Cannon force you to disclose national security information on the public docket. Set aside having our lawyers have attorneys' eyes access in these secret SEPA Section 4 hearings, that Congress passed a law that was signed into law so that these proceedings take place. I also want portions of that to be made public on the public docket. Why would Donald Trump be requesting that? Because he wants to harm the country. Why else would he want these documents and national security secrets to be made public? He's trying to blackmail and graymail the Department of Justice. Now, if Judge Eileen Cannon takes the bait, do you think Judge Eileen Cannon's going to take the bait? I do. I think she'll probably ignore CAMPA, the same way she asserted equitable jurisdiction over the search warrant case. I think that she will ignore CAMPA, and she will rule in Donald Trump's favor and say this needs to be disclosed publicly and Donald Trump's lawyers can appear. So then what happens thereafter? Then special counsel Jack Smith goes to the 11th Circuit, and here's where you don't have to worry at all. These documents are not going on the public docket. This will be an attorney's eyes only hearing. Judge Cannon, if she sides with Trump, is going to lose, and it would be such an egregious reversible error that this is the type of error that could lead to Judge Cannon being forced off this case. The 11th Circuit has precedent that's like a 3-strike rule, where in another case, in a sentencing issue where there were multiple times where the judge continued to make errors, the 11th Circuit finally said enough is enough. This could potentially be Judge Cannon's 3rd strike if you count the prior 2 reversible errors she made when the search warrant was executed at Mar-a-Lago and she asserted equitable jurisdiction and was reversed twice in 2 scathing orders by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals back in 2022. So Jack Smith knows what he's doing here, and Donald Trump could have just sat back, let Judge Eileen Cannon continue to delay and obstruct, but now you force the issue. You forced Judge Eileen Cannon to do your bidding. When she does, I think special counsel Jack Smith goes immediately to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. And if she doesn't and she rejects it, then I think that Donald Trump's going, oh, Judge Cannon, I thought you were supposed to, be supportive of me. I thought you were supposed to. There's no way she makes the right ruling, though. There's no, she's been doing everything she can for him. So when presented with this, as I've said, her corruption is matched, or in many ways even superseded or exceeded rather, by her incompetence. So let's look out for that. But Jack Smith, with this opposition, calling Trump out, calling the co-defendants out, daring Judge Eileen Cannon to make reversible error, pointing out the Campo case. It is brilliant legal work. Make Trump pay for his overreach here, Jack Smith. That's what's going down in the government's consolidated opposition to Trump's motion for access to SEPA Section 4 filings, and Nauta and De Oliveira's motion related to the ex parte nature of SEPA Section 4.
It is Thursday, the 21st of December of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Metro's Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life, and we all need at least a little spice in our lives. Yeah. Okay, we had quite a day yesterday, didn't we? All the days are starting to be quite the day, and have been for quite some time since, Donald Trump came down that escalator. I love how people are wondering, like on Morning Joe this morning, and what the hell is Tweety doing back on my TV? What the hell? Okay, well, I guess they have to pull him out of the rafters. I think he hangs by his feet upside down on the rafters. They I don't know, activate him somehow, and he comes out and he tweets. He was Tweety before Twitter. Anyway, there's a few of the pundits that are wondering when did this racism begin? Give me a break. His dad got arrested at a KKK rally, so, take it from there. Largest fine paid for racial housing discrimination in the history of HUD. Where did it come from? When he came down that escalator, the first thing he started talking about was brown people being vermin, and he had to eradicate them. Jeez. And people, what? You're going to start killing migrants? Let's do it, illegals. Okay. And now where are we? Texas has a show me your papers law, where the police, just the regular police, can come up to you and say, you look like you're a migrant. You look like you're illegal. And you could respond very clearly, no, sir, I was actually born in El Paso. You are illegal. And you try to get them to understand, but they don't understand your accent because you come from Minnesota. Okay. That's going to be real fun. You go to the, I don't know, is it the Somali Republic of Texas or the Texas Republic of Somalia? Seems like a lawless land. Yeah, they got the cops dressed up as cops, and you think that they're doing something with the law, and they are. Pretty much, they are lawless, and they've got the law. The worst combination that you can imagine. So I guess that means any woman could be pulled over under the auspices of, well, you might be an illegal. And so therefore we have to check you out. Are you pregnant? I don't know. Well, let's go see. All right. Have you had a miscarriage in the last week? Let's check you out. All righty. Yeah, they say that Joe Biden is the genocide Joe. Do you notice? They're just going on a little drift here. But those genocide Joe types, they all just protest at Jewish synagogues, Jewish gatherings, black gatherings. Okay, they never go to a MAGA rally and start protesting. Not any of them do that. You know why? Because, well, they're finding out now. When they punched that elderly black lady, she didn't seem that elderly to me. She seemed like maybe she was in her 50s. Okay? You don't punch a 50-year-old woman anyway. It just bugs me they called her elderly. I mean, she's what, 50? Jeez. Anyway. Some of those protesters found out, in fact, they were whining about the Detroit, was it the 13th district? I'm trying to remember, but regardless, it was an annual get-together, and the pro-Hamas group came in there and started talking about ceasefire now and genocide Joe, and they said, the people inside said, you guys got to get out of here. And they wouldn't go. And then they actually, I think there was the woman with the yellow cane. She wasn't just some woman. I think that she was actually a former cop or a police captain or something. But she was like my mom's age, in her 80s. or close to it. But the lady that they punched, I mean, maybe she was 52. Maybe. Papers called her elderly. Stop that! Anyway, she got punched bad. And so these protesters were hustled out of the event. Curiously, the cops really didn't show up quick. I wonder why. Oh, it's those black Democrats. We'll take our time. And they did. So the protesters are now complaining that they were treated so terribly. In fact, someone stepped on my foot when they were trying to get me out of that building. Wah, wah, wah. It's AstroTurf. We have to keep reminding ourselves this pro-Hamas BS about Genocide Joe and Ceasefire Now. They care nothing about it. They are foot soldiers and fomenting, confusion. It's AstroTurf by Bannon and Flynn, and you gotta know Vlad's involved in that too. And I wouldn't be surprised if in this instance Vlad have like, hey, let's stick it to the U.S. They're in our way. All right. So, this Colorado decision is now down to whether the Supreme Court's going to rule for the divine right of kings. Even though the guy's a civilian now, okay? I know he's a civilian when he's a president. But he's not in office. He's not a king now. And they keep saying we got to let the voters decide. We decided twice. He's lost twice. Twice. 2016, he got in because of that weird electoral college scam that he ran. 18,000 votes spread over 3 counties, or what? 5 counties and 3 states. I don't know. Some ungodly little amount. That's all he had to manipulate. How was it that the Russians got that kind of data? And I'm looking at you too, Zuckerberg. You were involved in that BS. People forget that Facebook, Zuckerberg set up an office in Texas to help out the Trump campaign, to give them guidance on how to, show them the ropes. They didn't afford any of that expertise to Hillary. So somehow Vlad got all this like weird, granular data in which to manipulate the Electoral College, and they did, and it was shown in the Mueller report that that's what happened, and 2-3 dozen Russians got indicted and pretty much convicted absentia because, you're trying to extradite him with Vlad involved. It's a little difficult. But we never get to hear about all of that. All we get to hear is that, it's a Russian hoax and there was no collusion. Yeah. And I wouldn't put it above the D team on the Trump legal counsel to argue, well, technically it's not an insurrection anymore. It's an insurgency. So you can't really, charge him with being an insurrectionist because it's an insurgency now. And there's nothing in the Constitution that says insurgency. It says insurrection. Okay. Define the word is. And what else? Gosh, all right. That's where we are. They're using our structure, our rules, our laws against us. And it's been done before in other countries, and look what happened. All right, let's get off that rant and get into what we have in store for you here as we begin this fabulous Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays in this fabulous salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Yeah, that at the top, I thought I'd use the Medias touch, guys, to explain SIPA to us there about Jack Smith's most recent filing in opposition to Trump's request under the Classified Information Procedure Act, SIPA. Well, that's going to make Trump pay for Judge Cannon's protection. Sounds like a mob type of deal, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Jeez. On the rest of the menu, an Oregon court delivered a blow to Oregon's signature climate protection program, ruling in favor of industry and the utilities. What the hell? Yeah, the hits just keep coming. The Supreme Court will hear a challenge to the EPA rule limiting downwind power plant pollution in 10 states. Yeah, the good neighbor policy. They don't like it. And the chair of the MAGA Shasta County Board of Supervisors in California told a San Francisco reporter to drop dead in an email from his county account. That email did not turn up in a public records request. In fact, there were multiple requests. Well, that's what they do. They don't care about the law. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Poland's new cabinet has moved to free state media from the Conservative Party that consolidated its grip on it during 8 years in power. And a pro-peace Russian presidential hopeful has submitted her documents to register as a candidate. That's legal there? I don't know. We'll keep an eye on that. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Going to forego the usuals and tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it is by Gosha Wozniaka from the Oregonian. An Oregon court yesterday, Wednesday, delivered a blow to Oregon's signature climate protection program, invalidating it over the state's failure to follow rulemaking requirements. The program mandates ever-increasing cuts in emissions from the state's natural gas utilities, suppliers of gasoline, diesel, kerosene, and propane, as well as large industrial plants. Oregon's 3 gas utilities, an oil industry group, and a dozen other local trade organizations had challenged the program's rules last year, aiming to block them. The Oregon Court of Appeals found that the Environmental Quality Commission, the policy and rulemaking board for the state's Department of Environmental Quality, did not meet heightened disclosure requirements. The requirements come into play when the state adopts rules that apply to industries that must obtain a so-called Title V air permit reserved for major sources of air pollution. The Climate Protection Program, approved by the Commission in December of 2021, calls for graduated cuts in emissions from the state's natural gas utilities and fuel suppliers. It also requires existing and proposed large industrial facilities to reduce carbon pollution through the best available emissions reductions approaches. The goal, under the program's rules, is for fossil fuel suppliers to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2035 and 90% by 2050. Large industrial plants also must aim for 50% reductions by 2035. The program went into effect in January of 2022. The legal challenge to the program involves 3 separate lawsuits against the Environmental Quality Commission, one by Northwest Natural, Cascade Natural Gas, and Avista, another filed by the Western States Petroleum Association, and one filed by a coalition that includes the Oregon Business and Industry, a statewide trade association, and groups representing farming, logging, manufacturing, and other interests. No wonder the court said, throw this thing out. The State Attorney General's office is deciding whether to ask the Oregon Supreme Court to review the opinion. The Department of Environmental Quality said in a statement that its leaders are talking through next steps with the state lawyers. Sherman of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. The Supreme Court will hear arguments in February on whether the EPA can continue enforcing its anti-air pollution good neighbor rule in 10 states, an effort to restrict smokestack emissions from power plants and other industrial sources that burden downwind areas with smog-causing pollution. The High Court put off a decision on whether to halt enforcement of the rule, allowing it to stay in effect at least until after it hears arguments during its February session. The rule is being challenged by 3 energy-producing states, Ohio, Indiana, and West Virginia, as well as industry groups and individual businesses. Ground-level ozone, which forms when industrial pollutants chemically react in the presence of sunlight, can cause respiratory problems, including asthma and chronic bronchitis. People with compromised immune systems, the elderly, and children playing outdoors are particularly vulnerable. States that contribute to ground-level ozone or smog are required to submit plans ensuring that coal-fired power plants and other industrial sites do not add to air pollution in other states, at least significantly. In cases where a state has not submitted a good neighbor plan, or where EPA disapproves a state plan, the federal plan was supposed to ensure that downwind states are protected. And of course, when you're destroying the administrative state, who cares what happens to your neighbor? SF Gate, which is the online presence of the San Francisco Chronicle, brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. 3 months ago, the reporter emailed Shasta County Board Chair Patrick Jones a list of straightforward questions about a board resolution he'd sponsored, which allowed county officials to ignore state laws they felt were in violation of the Second Amendment. Now, the reporter wasn't hoping for much. The resolution was symbolic since county governments don't have the power to overturn state laws, and the Shasta Board is known for its exceedingly contentious relationship with journalists. Now I, meaning the reporter, certainly was not expecting the board chair to send me an email telling me to drop dead from his county account. I wrote about the curt response, prompting both amusement and concern from Shasta County residents. One woman even sent me a photo of herself in a shirt with the full text of his email, "Drop dead, Chair Jones," printed across the front. But the most consequential feedback came a few days later, when a source told me they'd filed a public records request for the email and had been told the county had no record of the exchange. Deleting that email would violate state records laws, which require public officials to keep most work-related communications for at least 2 years and release them if a member of the public asks, according to Jerry Flanagan, an attorney for public advocacy group Consumer Watchdog, and Sean McMorris, a researcher at California Common Cause. California law defines public records as any writing containing information relating to the conduct of the public's business, and states that access to information concerning the conduct of the people's business is a fundamental and necessary right of every person in this state. On August 7th, I, the reporter, filed my request asking for the exchange, which Flanagan and McMorris told me in their view was a clear example of a public record as an exchange between a reporter and a public official. Sure enough, that same day, the county responded that no relevant records were available. To make sure the disappearance of the drop dead email wasn't a one-off, I filed a request in October, asking for any emails sent to and from Jones from SF Gate reporters over the last year, which would have turned up several emails again. The county replied that there were no such records. Well, that is a clear violation, isn't it? It is. Well, we have to get to our break because I've got some responsibilities right now that's going to take a little bit of time, so I apologize. But I will be right back, and when we do get back, we are going to go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Hi, this is Your Health Quickly, a Scientific American podcast series.
We bring you the latest vital health news, discoveries that affect your body and your mind.
And we break down the medical research to help you stay healthy. I'm Tanya Lewis.
I'm Josh Fishman.
We're Scientific American's senior health editors. Today we're talking about a newly recognized form of heart disease, CKM syndrome, which is when you have overlapping cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, and metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes and obesity.
You know, we've got such a highly specialized medical system. Sometimes it seems like each doctor in it has their own organ.
Right. Like if I had a heart problem, I'd go see a cardiologist.
And if my kidneys weren't healthy, I'd check in with a nephrologist.
Or if I had diabetes or some other hormone-related problem, I'd see an endocrinologist.
But it turns out that these organs or health problems have a lot to do with one another. In particular, kidney problems and metabolic problems raise the risk for cardiovascular disease, which means everything from a heart attack to clogged arteries.
So all this medical specialization might keep a doctor from seeing the big picture risk.
Exactly. And that's been worrying cardiologists like Sadiya Khan of Northwestern University.
People who write diabetes guidelines write about that. People who write kidney guidelines write about that. People who write about heart guidelines write about that. But really, one patient isn't going to go to 3 different guidelines, and clinicians aren't going to go to 3 different guidelines.
And that's why Kahn helped write a new set of guidelines from the American Heart Association in collaboration with kidney and endocrine specialists. The guidelines, which were just released a few months ago, define a new form of heart disease called cardiovascular kidney metabolic syndrome.
Well, that's a mouthful. There's got to be a shorter way to say it.
Yeah, there is. This is science, and after all, they love their abbreviations. So this is called CKM syndrome.
Much easier. How common is CKM?
The Heart Association says that 1/3 of U.S. adults have at least 3 risk factors for the syndrome. There are many risk factors, and they include obesity, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and from the kidneys, the rate they remove contaminants from the blood.
When these are present, and when more than one is present, that they synergistically increase the risk of developing heart disease or dying prematurely from heart disease.
But how do problems in one organ drive problems in another?
I wondered the same thing, so I asked Kahn, whose specialty is preventing heart and blood vessel disease. She spends a lot of time looking at the interplay between different organs.
Oftentimes people talk about how the kidneys and heart are like an old married couple. We've known for some time that having kidney disease increases your risk of developing heart disease. So there's this connection that exists, and the reverse is also true. Having heart disease makes you more at risk for having kidney disease.
I love the old married couple analogy. But what's the biology behind this shared risk?
Yeah, there's lots of different mechanisms or crosstalk between the 2 different organs.
Basically, it starts with obesity. Excess fat cells secrete chemicals that cause inflammation, and that can harm blood vessels and damage both heart and kidney tissue. Inflammation also reduces cell sensitivity to insulin, the hormone that moves sugar out of the blood and into those cells. More blood sugar and less of it in the cells is the hallmark of diabetes, of course.
So, in the old married couple analogy, if one spouse gets upset about something, it upsets their partner too, and the whole marriage fails?
Or they go in for counseling and work it out. In this case, I guess the counselor is a cardiologist.
Not to belabor the metaphor too much, but Kahn did say that cardiologists have known about this couple for a long time. So why are they just getting around to treating them now?
I asked Kahn that why now question, and this is what she said.
Yeah, I think one of the key drivers was the awareness that there's a growing burden of these risk factors or conditions, and they're often clustering together. So we know that the rate of obesity, diabetes, kidney disease, and heart disease have increased in the past several decades.
So everyone is more at risk for CKM today. But Kahn also mentioned something else.
This recognition has also been complemented by the availability of therapies that aren't just treating someone's diabetes, but they also have cardioprotective benefits as well as kidney protective benefits. And so the availability of therapies that allow us to more holistically manage our patients was a key piece of this.
Is she saying there are new medications that could target these overlapping diseases?
That's exactly what she's talking about.
Therapies that have really emerged in the last several years include SGLT2 inhibitors and GLP-1 receptor agonists, specific classes of medications that have cardiovascular benefits, but also have been demonstrated to have benefit in people with kidney disease and people with diabetes and people with obesity or overweight.
I've heard of GLP-1 drugs. Those are things like Ozempic and Wegovy, which have been used to treat diabetes and weight loss and might also protect against heart disease and kidney disease. And SGLT2 inhibitors work on the kidneys, helping them filter out extra glucose in the blood. So they were originally developed as diabetes drugs. But then some big clinical trials showed they reduced the rates of heart disease as well.
Even though they were developed as drugs for diabetes, we found that they're not really diabetes drugs. You could call them a heart disease drug or a kidney drug. And I think that's, again, where this construct is very helpful, because we're not really just treating someone's diabetes. We're trying to treat the patient in front of us.
Now, Kahn is quick to point out that these drugs shouldn't be used by themselves. They should go along with lifestyle changes, diet, exercise, the usual stuff, if a person has several risk factors. And because of these advances, the Heart Association has also rolled out a new risk calculator for doctors to use, one that incorporates kidney disease and diabetes indicators along with heart risks. It's a complex formula, but it ends up giving doctors a good picture of a person's likelihood of developing CKM or some more specific form of heart disease, like heart failure.
One important difference is this tool lets doctors start evaluating risk at age 30. The previous assessment tools were only applicable for age 40 and up.
Yeah, Kahn points out that if somebody is going to get heart disease, the very first signs will show up in that 30 to 40 decade. And at that early stage, the symptoms can be rolled back with the right treatments.
As someone in my 30s, that's good news for me. Recognizing CKM could mean more people will be diagnosed and treated sooner, and stay healthy for a greater part of their lives.
Your Health Quickly is produced by Talika Bose, Jeff Delvisio, Kelso Harper, Corinne Leung, and by us. It's edited by Ella Fetter and Alexa Lim. Our music is composed by Dominic Smith.
Our show is part of Scientific American's podcast, Science Quickly. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, give us a rating or review. And if you have a topic you want us to cover, you can email us at yourhealthquickly@sciam.com. That's yourhealthquickly@sciam.com. For Your Health Quickly, I'm Tanya Lewis.
And I'm Josh Fishman.
See you next time.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. We've been keeping you updated on attempts to bar former President Donald Trump from 2024 state ballots. A ruling in the Colorado Supreme Court December 19th found that as president, he was an officer of the United States and did participate in an insurrection against the Constitution. The 14th Amendment's Section 3 disqualifies candidates for public office if they have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the U.S. Constitution. But scholars divided on whether the president falls under this phrase, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States. Some argue it is notable that the framers didn't specifically mention the president, but did mention Congress. The Colorado decision found that the U.S. Constitution specifies the post of president as an office 25 times, the court saying it seems most likely that the presidency is not specifically included because it is so evidently an office. It also ruled that evidence substantiated President Trump engaged in insurrection against the Constitution and a conviction was not required to meet this standard. Almost all scholars agree that the case is headed to an originalist-dominated U.S. Supreme Court, where the case may hinge on an interpretation of whether conviction for insurrection is required. 16 other state cases are pending. This decision is a must-read, and we have it at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day that Red Scare deportations began. 249 radicals, including anarcho-feminist Emma Goldman, were packed onto the USS Buford and deported to Russia. The year of 1919 had seen massive social convulsions. The Seattle General Strike had kicked off the year. It was followed by coal strikes and steel strikes, bombings, and race riots. There were increasing fears pillars of communist ideas and influences in the wake of the Bolshevik Revolution. These events touched off a draconian response by the U.S. federal government. Together with the young J. Edgar Hoover, Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer conducted mass raids and arrests of more than 1,000 suspected working-class radicals. The Department of Labor agreed that proclaimed membership in the Union of Russian Workers was a deportable offense. The ship set sail and docked in Finland, where trains transported the deportees into the Soviet Union. The vast majority of those deported had no criminal records and had never participated in any acts of terrorism. They were expelled for speaking out about their political opinions. According to Regan Schmidt, author of Red Scare, FBI, and the Origins of Anti-Communism in the United States, employers' associations fueled the anti-radical climate. They were engaged in an intense open-shop counterattack against post-war organizing campaigns and strike activity. The main goal was to discredit unions as subversive, Bolshevistic, and alien to basic American values. Donning the name The American Plan, closed shops were referred to as Sovietism in disguise, and propaganda campaigns were waged to ensure blacklists, internal union dissension, yellow dog contracts, and strike breaking.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 43 degrees Fahrenheit. We are under an active dense fog advisory, and we will have cooler temperatures today, topping out maybe in the mid-50s, probably a bit cooler. It went up a little above 60 yesterday. Mostly cloudy early after this fog rises, then sunshine for the afternoon, winds light and variable. Clear to partly cloudy overnight with lows around 40, winds light and variable. And then looks like we're going to have a bit of rain tomorrow with breaks of sun in the afternoon. Highs only in the mid-40s. Winds light and variable. And we should be getting about a quarter inch of rain tomorrow, Friday during the day and Friday night. Looks like pollen is rated as none here in our little village of Rogue River. The air quality index is in the good range at 19 parts per million, and that daytime UV index remains low at level 1. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.1 inches. Visibility is down to 1.5 miles, and relative humidity is at 96%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 55 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 52 degrees and cloudy. Rome is 53 and clear. Bagram is 40 degrees and clear. Kyiv is 35 and clear. Hong Kong is 50 degrees, partly cloudy with heavy wind. Tokyo is 40 degrees and clear. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 60 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 and sunny with a coastal flood advisory, and that also means do not turn your back on the ocean. Chicago, Illinois is 42 degrees and cloudy, and New York, New York is 40 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Monica Shalowska of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Poland's new pro-European Union government has begun to wrestle control of the country's state media and some other state agencies from the Conservative Party that consolidated its grip on them during 8 years in power. The cabinet of Prime Minister Donald Tusk, which took office last week, said yesterday, Wednesday, it had fired and replaced the directors of the state television and radio outlets and the government-run news agency. It seeks to reestablish independent media in Poland in a legally binding and lasting way. Tusk's government has made it a priority to restore objectivity and free expression in state media, which the previous government under the Law and Justice Party used as aggressive propaganda tools, attacking Tusk and the opposition and spreading its Eurosceptic views. During its rule, Law and Justice cut corners and ignored some procedures to gain control of the media's supervisory bodies and of the key appointments as it tightened its grip. The new government's first step towards a return to media freedom were met with protests by Law and Justice. Party leader Kaczynski, top party figures, and many of its lawmakers occupied buildings housing the offices and the studios of state-run television TVP in the hopes that their supporters would come out to demonstrate in big numbers. A rally was called for later yesterday, and less than a few hundred people gathered, flying Poland's national white and red flags. They were there for a few minutes and then they disappeared. The Law and Justice issued a statement saying the actions of the new government were illegal and that the changes in leadership of the media outlets were done unlawfully. The irony was that for years, the Law and Justice government actively sought to discredit and eliminate from the market the TVN station that was highly critical of the administration. TVN is owned by U.S. Warner Brothers Discovery, Inc. Now, there was no brutality involved yesterday, and the change of management was done in line with the law. The new government exercised its 100% ownership rights. Some police were deployed in front of the building, but their goal was to ensure calm.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Staff at the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Russian politician calling for peace in Ukraine presented documents yesterday, Wednesday, to Russia's Central Election Commission to register as a candidate for the country's 2024 presidential election. Regional legislator Yekaterina Dunskova hopes to challenge Putin promoting her vision of a humane Russia that's peaceful, friendly, and ready to cooperate with everyone on the principle of respect. Speaking to journalists in Moscow yesterday, Duntsova said she hoped the event would inspire her supporters. If accepted as an independent candidate, the former journalist would next need to gather 300,000 signatures of support from at least 40 Russian regions. I feel a sense of accomplishment. We've done everything that we needed to do. We've made this step, and I think it should inspire people who support us, she said. The tight control that Putin has established over Russia's political system during 24 years in power makes his re-election for a fifth term in office in March all but assured. Prominent critics who could challenge him are either in prison or living abroad, and most independent media have been banned. Speaking to the AP in a previous interview, Duntsova said she was afraid of the Kremlin's previous targeting of opposition activists, but she said it is necessary to present an alternative to Putin and his policies. She said, if elected, her first presidential decree would mandate the release of Russia's political prisoners without giving names. In earlier statements, she spoke of her readiness to free Putin's arch-enemy, the anti-corruption activist Alexei Navalny. If he's still alive, of course. Duntsova took her first step towards candidate status on Sunday when her run was endorsed by 500 supporters as required by Russian election law. More than 500 people gathered in Moscow to back the bid, according to Telegram, a Russian news publication covering the opposition, protests, and human rights issues. The meeting ultimately proceeded unimpeded, despite electricity at the venue briefly going out and security guards initially refusing to let some enter the building. Well, that's Vladian politics for you. All right, that does bring us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.